Hello and welcome back to John and Letty's podcast. We are continuing with our marriage workshop. And today we're going to be talking about one of the next topics, which is deep communication in marriage.
Yes, it's such an important topic because in our previous podcast that it was kind of an introduction talking about hurts. One of the things that causes hurts in people's lives is miscommunication. And in fact,
lack of communication.
Exactly, lack of communication, which even leads to miscommunication. So this is the reason why we decided to actually do a whole separate podcast to talk about issues in communication.
Yeah, and one of the keys for a successful marriage is to learn to have deep communication. It will avoid a world of problems when you learn to communicate with your spouse. Isn't that true?
Yes. Now, one thing is that there's communication, like the communication that you need for daily life. And that's not what we're talking about here. It's like who picked up the kids? Is there gasoline in the car? What's for dinner? How was everything? It's what we're talking about is about a deeper level of communication. And for that deeper level of communication to happen, something needs to happen in that the person has to open up their heart, which to many people is difficult because it puts them in a vulnerable position. And so here is where communication, real communication takes place, but where care has to be taken to know how to open your heart. And then when someone opens up their heart to you, how not to hurt them so that you can continue to have access to that part of their heart and have deep communication.
Yeah, so that's why it's so important in a marriage. Trust is so important in a marriage.
Yes.
Because you are not going to go and open your heart to someone that you don't trust. So when it comes to deep heart, communication, your spouse should be the safest place and your closest confidant that you can go to. So, but you need to trust that person because if you're gonna open up your heart, and sometimes we have things that we hide or push deep inside, things that embarrass us or things like that, and we need to be able to open up our heart to someone that is safe.
Right, because for example, if someone shares something that's very near and dear to their heart. This is something that if somebody else take this, to them it's something very precious. So it's like offering you something very precious. And what do you do with it if you ridicule it?
Right.
If you treat it lightly, or even worse, if you make fun of it.
Right.
Or even worse, if you expose it to other people and make fun of it, that will cause deep hurt in the other person's life. But more importantly, what it will do is it'll enact a safety mechanism, which is that person is going to shut their heart and they will not trust you again to reveal that. So there has to be a restoration in that area in order for people to once again be able to share. And of course, there are also cases where people have actually done that with other people, and because others betrayed their confidence, then they do not feel comfortable opening their hearts in marriage. But like you were saying, it needs to be the place where people can feel comfortable. And if there's any place where you should feel comfortable opening your heart, it should be with your spouse.
And that's right. And in our case, you are the person that knows me the best, the deepest than anyone else here on earth. And I feel more comfortable telling you anything about my life because I know that I'm going to a place of trust. When I say something, even though it might be ridiculous, it might be, something that even you may find not as important, but if it's important for me, if it hurts my heart, if I want to open up and talk about my fears, talk about my worries, talk about being embarrassed or anything like that, I know that I'm going to be in a safe place with you, my spouse, that you are not going to take it lightly, that you are not going to dismiss me, that you're not going to make fun of me. And that is the safe place. But you know what happens in marriage? Sometimes, we have seen it in all of these years in ministry. Sometimes people have confidence outside of the marriage, and they communicate to other people the hurts that they're having in their marriage, and they don't communicate it with each other. So then you have two people hurt, and nothing happens. No resolution comes. Nothing gets better. And there's nothing wrong with having confidence, friends, people that you trust. I do, but my number one confidant after God is you, my spouse.
Yes, and the other thing that it could happen is that if people start to open up their heart to people of the opposite sex, then that can cause an emotional connection, which ultimately
very dangerous.
Can lead to a betrayal in marriage.
Yep.
So that's why it's important. And in fact, this is the number one key to be able to have deep communication, is to know that you can trust the other person with the things that you are sharing with them. And again, some people, maybe they don't do it out of malice, but they just do it out of ignorance or out of immaturity.
Yeah.
And then they just make fun of the other person, and that just always ends up wrong.
Yeah. When we first got married, we didn't know about these things.
Correct.
And we made mistakes.
Yes.
I remember that when you got angry, you used to be very quiet.
Yes.
And you thought that maybe that was going to solve the problem. And what did I used to do? I used to be oblivious.
Yes. And this is, I don't know why it somehow feels good to try to give a silent treatment to someone. And what would happen was that because you wouldn't realize, then you have to kind of escalate the silent treatment to make sure that somebody catches your attention. So that's when people start like throwing doors, huffing and puffing, or doing something to try to catch somebody's attention to let them know, hey, I'm upset. But you know what? If the person doesn't realize, then you just get more and more upset.
And it doesn't solve anything.
That's what I found. I said, you know what? This is just kind of dumb. It doesn't really work. So we came to an agreement early on, which is if there's something that you do that bothers me, or if something that I do that bothers you, then we will discuss it and we will talk about it and fix the problem rather than just be quiet. And I don't know why it feels good to try to give a silent treatment, but if it doesn't work, it has been so much better.
Much better.
To just shift and just talk about it. And sometimes it might be something that happens in public or in a place where it's not easy to talk about. So at that point, you just reserve it until you're home and there's some personal time where you can discuss it. The funny thing is that I realized that some things I did inadvertently, and then sometimes there were things you did inadvertently.
Right.
But the fact that we pointed it out to each other, we made a mental note, I'm not going to do this in public. So we might mess up, but now if we mess up only once. Because after that, we fix it.
So after that, what we have learned is that when you have deep communication, it brings you closer. It brings more of a deeper emotional connection between the spouses, and that's what happened with each other.
Correct.
And actually, that happened earlier in our relationship, so
Thank God.
that helped us grow a lot as a couple.
And I think avoid a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, brought us together.
And that never allowed things ever to escalate, because there are some cases that we spoke about. People escalate to verbal abuse. People escalate to all kinds of things. And just doing this one step cut everything off before there was ever a problem.
Yeah. And isn't it true that when you form a deep emotional connection with your spouse, that everything in the relationship gets better?
Absolutely.
It's more fun.
Absolutely.
There's less stress.
Yes.
It's even the sexual life gets better.
Yes.
Everything gets better.
And it also becomes good to be when you're with that person, you feel comfortable, you enjoy it.
Yes. Without feeling pressure or stress or anything like that.
Right.
It's because when you are able to communicate at a deep level like that, you can be your true self.
Yes.
And you feel that this is a comfortable space, a safe place to be, where you're not going to be judged or dismissed or hurt or anything like that. So it's forming that deep level of connection between the spouses.
Yes. And again, it's important not only just to open up, but if you're the person listening, to know how to receive this communication properly and how to be able to interact in that safe area so that that deep communication can continue.
Well, this is a good time for us to do an illustration. This is something that we do when we minister married couples, and it's an illustration of what to do, and then we're going to discuss what happened. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go first. I want to talk to you about something that is deep in my heart, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm not feeling very well because I'm feeling a lot of fear, because our daughter went to school to that place that's really far. We really, don't have control anymore. She's in a city by herself, and I feel, fearful about her safety. And I'm even feeling guilty because I feel like we contributed for her to, and encouraged her to go and study away. And I'm kind of not ready for that. And I'm not feeling well about that. I'm feeling a lot of fear.
Well, what you're saying, given the way that we see things are going, it's very understandable that you would feel this way because we see all kinds of things happening. But in our case, we can look at a couple of things. We can think about, is this the right decision, in the sense that, was this the will of God? And we've been sure that it has been. Also, we know that there's a protection that comes upon her. We pray for her. We know that this is the will of God. And even though things are happening throughout, we can have confidence that just as we have seen the hand of God through different parts of our lives, we can trust him that just as he opened these doors, he's going to have everything under control. Yes. So no matter what the situation, we can trust him, and we know that everything is going to work out.
Well, thank you for listening to me and, not dismissing what I'm feeling. And I actually feel so much better after talking to you about it. So I think this is something we can continue to pray for together.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what happened here? First, I was able to be my true self, communicating to you my deep emotion that I was feeling, fear, and also embarrassment or shame about, even about feeling this way. And also I felt guilty about, being responsible or feeling responsible for my daughter being away. So I felt that it was a safe place to go to. And I didn't feel that I was dismissed or you didn't take into account my emotions. I felt heard.
Yeah, and there could have been a number of responses that could have happened and would have made this go the wrong way. So, for example, I could have said, oh, there you go again, afraid always. How many times are we going to hear about this? She's fine, she's over there, don't worry about it. That would have solved absolutely nothing.
And it would have made me feel worse than I was feeling.
It would have dismissed the way you felt. There's a reality to it. And it would have just, even though you opened your heart, I didn't spend the time to listen to it. Or I could always say, oh, you're always repeating the same thing over and over again. Can you just change the CD or change whatever, change the channel, do something else? Or again, that's something that would not have been helpful to you at all, as opposed to taking us back to how these decisions were made. In our case, we would say, well, We knew that something was the will of God. So now we have a trust because we are looking to even a source higher than ourselves. Because it's true, if you have a child or you have whatever situation happening someplace else, you can't control it, then you need to have someone who is in charge or who can handle it. And we know that God is able to handle every situation in our lives or whatever. So at that point, we focus back on what is something we can trust, something we can count on, and based on which we can stop having worry, fear, or whatever, and then just have a walk of faith.
Yes. But sadly, sometimes in marriage, there's a lot of loneliness. And spouses don't feel that they can go and open up their hearts like that because of the past. Maybe they were dismissed, maybe the other person doesn't listen. So what we saw here is that there are really two important parts in deep communication. And one of them is being able to express what you're feeling.
Correct.
And being feeling vulnerable and opening up your heart to that other person. And then the second part is to listen, for the other person to listen without judging, without making fun, without dismissing. So those two parts, that makes for a really good communication.
Yes. And it can resolve a problem in a way that is satisfying to both of us.
And the result of all of that, like I was saying earlier, is that when a married couple can talk about those things deep in your heart, and there's many other things, but that was just an example.
Right.
It brings that closeness for the couple.
Right.
It brings that deep connection, emotional connection, and what it does is that it blesses the marriage, blesses the relationship, and it makes for a successful marriage.
Right.
So I think we are done with talking about communication for now, and we have more coming up in the next podcast. We're going to be talking about money in marriage, and we're going to be talking about what else? Sex in marriage.
Yes.
It's going to be good.
Yes. And those topics. And we also did a topic about healing problems in marriage. So don't miss any of those. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend, and get somebody connected. And this has helped you, let them know.